just give me the
Go.
company down.
3, 2, 1, action.
Now we'll speak about the second photograph of Arthur O'Connor. To speak about this properly, we need to go back a few years to the origins of Celbridge GAA Club. In July 1885, it was decided that Celbridge was going to host an athletics meeting under the rules of the GAA. By doing that, Celbridge became the third oldest club in the county. That was decided upon in July. In August, the meeting was held. It was a race meeting with a full schedule, the marquee event, of course, being the mile. Now, that race was won by a man called Tommy Kniff. He was barely 18 years of age at the time. Tommy was from Clane. His father was a blacksmith. They lived right beside Clongowes Wood. Tommy went on to become the most famous athlete in the world of his age, in his day. He won the mile, and in 1886 he went over to England, to the North of England Championships, where he raced in the 2-mile event, and he beat the British and the North American champions. That was in front of a crowd of 40,000 people. The American champion, a Canadian, Mr. Carter, was so annoyed with this young whippersnapper beating him that he wanted a rematch, and a month later he travelled over to the RDS, where a once-off race event was held in front of 20,000 people. The Freeman's Journal called it the greatest race of the century, and of course it was over 4 miles, and Tommy of course won. Now Tommy had a number of monikers. He was known as the Little Irish Wonder. He was known as the my personal favourite, Tommy of the Bulldog Heart and the Greyhound Legs. He was only 5'5" and he weighed only 9 stone. He raced anything from half a mile up to 10 miles. After winning that race in the RDS, he travelled over to America and he became an international star. He set multiple world records from 1 mile, 1.25 mile, 1.5, 1.75, 2 miles, all the way up to 10 miles. In fact, some of his records weren't beaten for 50 years. He actually beat one of his own mile records by 7 seconds at one attempt. He was renowned because he didn't like to train, but he just had a fantastic running style that was the envy of everybody. His fame at the time is reckoned to be similar to what Usain Bolt, Lionel Messi, Roger Federer have in present times. In later life, Tommy contracted typhoid and malaria, retired from running, joined the army in America, signed up for the American-Spanish War, and ended up dying in mysterious circumstances in the Philippines in 1912. He drowned, even though he was renowned as being a very strong swimmer, and there was questions as to the circumstances. Anyway, that's Tommy, the man who won the main event in the inaugural Celbridge GAA meeting in 1885. Now at that time, soon after, Celbridge actually had 2 clubs. They had the Celbridge Shamrocks, which were based up in Kilwogan, where the Murphy family live, and also Hazel Hatch Harpers, who were based nearer here, they were next door to the railway. Now, in the early years, the Harpers started to align themselves with the Dublin District, GAA, and by the turn of the century, the club had effectively dissolved. We know that around 1901, Celbridge was simply known as Celbridge GAA. In 1906, the club played in its first senior championship final at any grade. It was the hurling final that they lost to Clane. I mentioned earlier how we can track loads of family members that played in that match all the way through to 1923 and onwards into modern times. Now, between 1906 and 1913, the club was in the doldrums. And in 1913, this man came along, Arthur O'Connor. He became chairman of the club, and at the first executive, it was decided to buy a single football and a single slitter. He helped to invigorate the club, get it back on its feet, and laid the foundations for what came next 10 years later. Now, Art had a fantastic background, both political and professional. He was born in Elm Hall in Celbridge, He was educated in the Holy Faith School in Celbridge and then went on to Blackrock College in Dublin and then on to university in Trinity. In Trinity, he studied engineering, and upon graduating, he immediately got a job with Kildare County Council. Now, around 1914-1915, he got involved in politics and became one of the main organisers of the Irish Volunteers in North Kildare. So Art would have been one of the guys that would have most likely recruited Ned Mulligan, Owen Murphy, Paddy Healy, and others. Paddy Healy and a number of other players as well. In 1918, he was interned over in Durham jail for what was called the German plot. Now, this was a spurious plot dreamt up by the British, supposing that leaders in Sinn Féin were colluding with the Germans for a German invasion of Ireland during World War I. Just an excuse to put him in jail. While in jail in 1919, he was elected as TD to the first Dáil for South Kildare. In 1921, at which point he had been released, he was elected to the second Dáil for the Kildare Wicklow constituency. Now, in that second Dáil, Art O'Connor was made Minister for Agriculture. In 1926, Eamon de Valera, who was the titular President of the Republic at the time, Fianna Fáil were not in power. They didn't come to power until 1932, so the Republicans had their own title for President of the Republic. He resigned that post, and Art O'Connor became President of the Republic for the next 12 months. So we can always say that a chairman of Celbridge GA was both a government minister and a President of the Republic. After resigning, Art dropped out of political life. He went back to Trinity, he got a law degree and ended up being a circuit court judge down in Cork. After a number of years, he moved back up to Elm Court, and he, unfortunately, he died as he was just about to take up a position with the Pensions Board. So that is the story of the two photographs. Now, the one thing I would just ask you to do next time you're down in the club and you see these photographs is just have a good look at it. Have a look at the men that are staring out at you. The photographs are really, really beautiful. Not only do we have the one here, which has got the jersey, the replica jersey from the time. And sorry, one thing I forgot to mention was at that executive meeting in 1913, which kick-started the club again, the official name of the club at that point was Young Ireland's Hurling and Football Club, and it was called out specifically that the colours of the club were white with a green sash. Okay, so that replica jersey was designed as part of the Centenary celebrations last year, and many of them, over 200 of them, were sold. They were being worn by people as far away as Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Germany, Spain, England, and of course we see them all around the town and around the club. So it's a great, great memento to have. Here we have the medal, the original medal presented to the club by George McGann's children, Maeve and Dermot. It's the original 1921 medal. It's a fantastic thing to have in our possession. Anyway, next time you're down in the club, please take a close look at the players looking out at you. Think about their life and times. Think about the legacy that they left and which we try to continue as best as we can today. Thank you very much.